Hello and welcome to the next episode of the complete-ish course construction series, and we are going to look at 16 because that's the one that works for me the most at the moment. Now, what my vision for this hole is quite, I think, a fun one, but definitely challenging. You've got a reverse camber tee shot, which is tough. I don't think I'm going to go with bunkers on the inside. We're just going to go with some trees down this side. The fairway runs away on the far side, so it's how short do I want to make this tee shot, how much of a risk is there of rolling out here. And then the green itself, it's quite a long approach, so if you hit it 300 yards, you've got 200 left in. Hit 330 to that sort of an area, 170. And we're going to make the green fairly receptive. It's going to be kind of a punch bowl surrounded by bunkers, but there isn't going to be any kind of fairway in front of it to speak of. Now, the bunker's all completely placeholder at the moment. The green size and shape, completely placeholder. It's one of the bigger ones at this point in time. I'm not sure how much I want to keep. And the fairway itself is pretty wide, so well, very wide. So it's to what extent do we shrink this? We're going to play test a bunch, look at it from different lightings. So the main lighting we're going to be using is noon with some cloud cover, but then I can also do noon, clear, morning, afternoon. So morning goes to 9 o'clock. So I've got to bear in mind shadows for this one. Now for this hole, that should be absolutely fine. No issues. You'll see all of the barranca planting pretty nicely. And then afternoon, we're going to get a little bit on the green, which isn't ideal, but I can mitigate that with which pin I put on this round. So I can always get away with that if need be. But the default is going to be what we design around. It's just worth knowing what you have in there. So the first thing we're going to do is just play test a couple of times off the tee and see what happens. And before I do that, I'm just going to pop a temporary tee box down, because otherwise it's going to keep defaulting me to a hybrid or something. And as ever, save. Okay, sightline's rubbish, that's fine. At least at the moment. So driver here, if we took it right over the corner. It's a very wide fairway, and I don't want it to be where if you hit the high side you roll all the way off. Like there's got to be a degree of sensible design here. And this is too sloped at the moment, which is fine. What about if we hit 3-wood? I kind of want people hitting 3-wood for position on this hole. I want driver to be risky because I want you to be left with a long iron into a punch bowl style green, because I think that's something that is quite a nice way of managing it and managing the options without really forcing driver out of your hand. What about if we hit a lot of fade? I mean, this fairway is way too wide at the moment. So I think we need to neutralise the camber a little bit, a significant amount, and shrink the fairway. It's a combination of both. 3-wood's certainly an option, but we need to make sure that this play is an option, and you can sometimes hold it if you hit the very high side. I don't mind if you hit driver here and you roll out the other side. I am completely fine with that. But we can't be having driver up here with fade, then rolling out the other side. Partial driver. And that's about as fast of a driver as you possibly hit. 220, also fine. But you can see the spectrum of options we've got here. Like it's not just a hit it here, then here. Oh, you can take something off driver. And I think by shrinking that fairway, that'll mean that you're not just bunting a partial driver down here and being left with a wedge in. I'd want that to be an awesome drive, rather than just a, I'm not really thinking about it, I've hit a bit of a partial. So that's kind of what we're going to look at. We're going to look at shrinking the fairway. Yep, too wide. And it's which side we choose to shrink it. We're going to look at the green complex itself, because I'd want to reward you for being kind of, the angle's going to get better the further down here you are. But you're safe if you lay up back to here. We need to think about that a little bit more. I think the distance of the hole probably works. Maybe make it a little longer. Problem is, if we make it too long, then it becomes difficult to run out of fairway the other side. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to time lapse. Enjoy. Hopefully this is useful to watch. I think loads of it's going to become about the green complex. I'm really looking forward to digging into that one. Of course, it's worth considering before we do leap into that, what are the alternatives or other things we could do with this hole. Well, we could go dead over the hill. I think that's going to be problematic for a number of reasons. Going around it this way makes sense. We don't have a downhill reverse camber hole. I think this tee shot offers a lot of potential of like difficulty, whilst also remaining extremely playable if you throttle back a little bit. Other things we could do, well, we could put the green a bit further this way and kind of potentially reward you holding the high side. I don't know if I prefer that. I quite like the punch bowl sunk into the barranca. But I could certainly look at, so if we did a what if, how would the hole look if we did this sort of thing? And just delete those. It's an option. I don't like it as much. I like this one in that it makes you play to the low side and try and get as much distance out of it as you can and really threaten running through the fairway. I think that wouldn't do it so well. But I could see myself moving the green a little further back. Could shuffle these back a little bit more, trees back a little bit more. We've got a tiny bit of space to work with. Would that bring it into view on? No. Anyway, enough chat. We're to the time lapse. Enjoy. Okay, so as you can see, we mainly ended up. I still think the tee shot's going to be the hardest part of this hole. So I skipped ahead to the green complex, which sometimes is quite a cool way of flipping things up if you're struggling with one part of a hole. Now I've got this, and I feel pretty happy with where that's sitting, how it looks. Um, yeah, there's lots about this that I really like. So now that I've got that where I want it to, it just becomes a case of getting it to there. And I went back and forth on the green contouring. I think we still have some trickier pins. So something back here, this slope needs softening a touch. The one back here will be really interesting, but it's in its own little bowl. So there's definitely a good way to get to it. And you've got one front and one probably around about here somewhere. And there's the possibility of having one in the middle, which might be quite a fun one for like a proper birdie pin, although this is a bit of a subtle spine. So there was loads here that I thought I could work with, and this was always the part of the hole I had the clearest vision for, was the green, and just this little kind of punch bowl thing in and amongst the barranca, and we'll get that kind of coming up and through, and I think that will flesh out really nicely. So now all I need to do is put a challenging-ish tee shot on it, which allows you to hit 3-wood if you're not feeling confident with driver. And I think this will do it. So you can easily hit 3-wood down to here and you just leave a long approach. But you have to be precise and there's not much room for margin for error, particularly. Or you try and chase that drive around the trees, try and get to about here, and then you've got a much lesser club in towards some of these pins. So that's kind of the essence of the hole and where we go with it. What I'll do in the next episode is start planting it, testing a little bit more on the tee shot, working out whether this shape really works, how we're going to frame this side, other things like that I will be thinking of between the two episodes. So yeah, hopefully this was interesting and you got to see kind of the fight with the bunkers. These jagged shapes can be really, really cool. One of the things I find most tricky is I try to make the bunkers too small initially, so then you have to go out and expand a little bit, which can work nicely. I was really struggling with this bunker shape. I realised I had it going the wrong way. And I think the planting will help these really merge as well. And you got this one squished in here, which I quite like. Like, it's not normally where I'd chuck a bunker, and certainly I wouldn't extend it out this way, but I think it blends in and ties in with the environment pretty nicely. The final thing I did was added this little bit of a rise up here, which I think is quite interesting because you might stay up there. You might, if you get over that, that's going to be a really challenging recovery shot. But it might bounce you back onto the green as well, which, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how that plays, but I think it could be interesting. Certainly, some little rise is just how high that is. And then lastly, we just tidied up some of the grandstand stuff that was looking a little messy. The other thing I'm going to be thinking about is the look into two in the next episode. So, do we want this green as high as it is? Do we want to lower it? If we lower it, how much do we want to lower it by? I mean, 10 feet would look pretty good. 8 feet, maybe. If we keep it as is, you've got the potential of that pin as like a skyline pin, which is always quite fun. And then you look at it, and actually, you're right you're miles away from the ocean. So, all sorts of options there, which we're going to deliberate between episodes. Hope you enjoyed. See you again soon.